Let's bring in my Friday night regular, former Queensland Premier, old mate Campbell Newman. Great to see you again. The Bush Summit was on today. Courier Mail sponsored it. It was in Townsville. A lot of it on Sky News earlier. PM was there. Peter Dutton was there. But interestingly, Matt Canavan wrote a piece in the Courier today, Campbell, and I know for Queenslanders and you this is an old argument, suggesting that North Queensland become a separate state. Have you heard that line before, do you think, somewhere, Campbell?
Oh, absolutely. And indeed, one of my former colleagues, a terrific bloke by the name of Sam Cox, who was one of the members for the Townsville area, has been a strong advocate for this. Look, I'm not entirely sure, Steve, but I can tell you now there are some good arguments for it. I mean, look, just for viewers to think about this, the distance as an aircraft flies from Brisbane to Melbourne is exactly the same as the distance from Brisbane to Cairns. So Queensland's a very big place. And geographically, they've always felt up north that they're not being listened to by Brisbane. And they also feel that they contributed a huge amount to the gross state product economically, and that they're not getting their share of the loot. So, you know, I know it might sound like more politicians and more government, but actually I think the people in the north see it as liberating themselves from the constraints of the people in the south. And frankly, when I look around these days at the sort of woke inner city sort of viewpoints in Brisbane, you know, I feel like I've got far more affinity to the people in Townsville and Cairns and Mackay than live in my local neighbourhood. I've got to tell you that.
Yeah, given the size and given that example you give of the distance between Brisbane and Cairns, it probably makes some sense. And then you look at Western Australia, they have a similar argument. Now, talking about, and you brought it up, woke inner city people, the Environment Minister, Tanya Plibersek, this week has come under fire. She's jumped in and blocked, can you believe this, $1 billion gold mine in central west New South Wales. It's near Orange because of an Indigenous protection order. But apparently it's only one woman who's actually complained about this. The local Wiradjuri elders say they approved of the project. They've got no idea who made the complaint. Then we find out this morning that the woman who made the complaint likened central west New South Wales with Gallipoli in terms of its historical importance, because tribal wars happened there between Indigenous Aboriginal tribes and colonial settlers. I mean, seriously, can we not understand that the country is in a fair bit of economic mess, and $1 billion gold mine with the jobs attracted to it wouldn't be a bad idea?
Well, I think the decision itself needs a whole lot of scrutiny. I'm not sure if these things in this particular piece of legislation can be subject to judicial review, but I think that should be looked at if it's possible. I also question whether perhaps it's one for the Anti-Corruption Commission to have a look at as well. Not that I know of anything specifically, but when you've got a decision like this coming from left field, it is very strange. But the thing I'd like to say too, Steve, is the total inconsistency. I mean, there are renewable, so-called renewables projects that are ramping up across Australia that have really big environmental impacts, and yet they get waved through. I mean, my colleagues in the Libertarian Party who's standing for the Senate, Jim Wilmot and Lachlan Wade, are pointing out to people that in a few years' time, if you get in a boat and sail up the Queensland coast from Brisbane to Cairns, which I referred to before, at night, you will just see on the mountaintops of the ranges to the west, inland from the coast, just the red lights of all these wind farms, the flashing lights of these massive towers, 250, 300 metres tall. That's environmental destruction, Steve. Biodiversity, scenic amenity being swept away because somehow we've got to go net zero. And yet the small impact of this gold mine is somehow now a federal issue. Like, it's really sus the way these laws are being administered.
I agree, and I mean, the same week that Plibersek's done this, she's ticked off on I couldn't believe it. I had to do the numbers myself because I don't quite understand hectares, but a 30,000 acre solar farm on a disused cattle station near Darwin, a long way away from Darwin, that's going to have to be connected with 800 kilometres of transmission lines. That just gets waved through. I mean, who's to say what's along that 800 kilometre transmission line route that might not incur some complaint from Indigenous Australians? I mean, the two things just don't add up, do they?
Well, yeah. They don't add up, and there was a very interesting graphic in the Australian newspaper, and just to picture it for people, the Australian newspaper showed the footprint of this and compared it to the south side of Sydney from the CBD down to Botany Bay, east to the cliff line from, say, Vaucluse down to Maroubra, and west probably towards Marrickville. You know, it's a massive sized development. And then if there's going to be a cable going to Singapore, an undersea cable, what about sort of this song line issue we saw being used to disrupt? I know it's a different part of Australia, different Aboriginal groups, but again, it's just the inconsistency. I mean, surely this country is going to be irrevocably changed by this solar project.